Pentax P30, Canon T90, Mamiya RZ67, Fuji 6.9, Fuji GX617, Canon 5D, Canon 5D Mark II, Panasonic GF1, Olympus EM5, Olympus EP5, Olympus EM1 Mark I, Olympus EM1 Mark II, Olympus Pen F, Fuji X Pro 1, Fuji X Pro 2, Fuji X-T5, Ricoh GR3, Ricoh GR3X, Zero Image Pinhole, Holga GFN, Lomography Fisheye 2, Polaroid One-Step, Fuji Instax SQ6, Polaroid SX70, Lubital 166, Olympus Trip, Olympus 35RC, and Nikon FM2. Hello everyone, and welcome to another fun-packed video. So those are the cameras I've owned since 1986, when I started my photography journey. Some I still have, whilst others have come and gone and moved on to live with other lucky photographers via the power of eBay. Now, many of you may see this as an Olympus YouTube channel, or was that, and now a Fuji YouTube channel perhaps. Those are the two main brands I've used since starting this YouTube channel. But to me, it's purely a photography channel, where many cameras are used and talked about. I love cameras, and of course I have bought into one brand or another along the way. If I could, I would try every camera out there, not necessarily to review, but simply for my own experience. There are cameras then that I have never owned, some quite obvious, such as the latest Nikon Z series or the Sony A7 range of cameras. Both full frame, and to be honest, I haven't used full frame since 2012. Well, unless you include 35mm film as full frame. Cameras, in a way, are less important than our photography. Well, they are essential, of course, there's no photography without them, but we do love talking about cameras. YouTube loves us talking about cameras. Camera-related videos, in many ways, are much more popular than on-location photography videos. You lot love gear-related videos, even if you say you don't. It's often said that the camera is just a tool, but we choose our own particular camera and choice of brand for a reason, and the one we choose can influence the type of images we take. I believe that. So in this video, I wanted to talk about the favourite cameras I never owned, the ones I missed out on, the ones I wished I had owned, but for one reason or another didn't. Without them, my photography perhaps took a certain path. I have images that are not in my catalogue that may have been if I had owned one of these other cameras. That's how influential I feel certain cameras can be sometimes. But first, let me remind you about E6, my photography subscription. E6 is my extra content. E6 is where this channel was built from. E6 is based on my photography journey so far. E6 is content other than just videos. E6, to be honest, prevents me having to do sponsored ads in these YouTube videos. E6 is videos, e-guides, podcasts, ebooks, image reviews and exclusive discount. E6 is this YouTube channel but without restrictions. So if you do like what I do here, if you do like what I have to say, if you like my approach to photography, then you can support me and learn so much more with an E6 subscription. Head to my website and see what all the fuss is about, and on my website you also see details of my upcoming photography workshops in London. Places still available if you're quick. So if we go way back, the first camera I owned was a Pentax P30. This was chosen as I wanted the simplest model out there, and this one had full program mode, quite unique back then, and chosen simply because I didn't understand any of the modes or settings in photography. The one I rejected was the classic Olympus OM10. The Pentax got me through my first 2 years of learning then. If I'd owned the OM10, I think I would have appreciated cameras more from the start. Many cameras released these days have a very similar look to the OM10 with its buttons and dials, whereas the Pentax was more minimal, more for the beginner, which I was. The OM10 is still seen as a classic, whereas the Pentax perhaps isn't. My upgrade from that was huge. I bought my next camera instead of buying a car when I inherited a bit of cash. The king of 35mm at that time was the flagship Canon T90, and I went for this, a camera costing £500, which was a lot back in 1988. Its main rival was the Minolta 9000. This was the first model that I knew about that had autofocus. And this was groundbreaking technology back then. Rubbish by today's standard, of course, though. I instead, however, continued the manual focus journey, and here I do think I went the right route, and actually I still own that T90. In medium format, I own the Mamiya RZ67, alongside a Fuji 6.9 rangefinder. The Mamiya was chosen instead of the rival Pentax 6.7, as I wanted the waist-level viewfinder experience, but the medium format camera I never owned was the Hasselblad 500. My Mamiya was bought second-hand, again for about £500, as the Hasselblad was out of my price range, and was throughout my 10 years of shooting medium format. The 6x7 format was ideal for magazine use though, and the format was also ideal for cropping to X-pan size frames, which introduced me to panoramics. But I lusted after the Hasselblad, just as I do with Leicas now. The images out of these more expensive cameras are the same, but the experience of using them would, I think, change some of the shots that I captured. With a Hasselblad, you were of course forced to frame square, something I really only adopted in the last few years. The one medium format camera that I did own, that I absolutely loved, was the mighty Fuji GX617. This was the upgrade in panoramic terms. Today this is often seen as a very trendy camera to have, but back then it gave me images that others just couldn't capture. Expensive to run, but it opened up the world of panoramic to me that changed my photography in so many ways. The camera I never owned, however, was another panoramic, that X-Pan, the baby Fuji in many ways. Panoramics on 35mm film rather than 120 film. Again, the cost hindered this because they were also very expensive and still are. But if there was ever a camera that I would love to be made into digital, it would be this, a digital panoramic on a rangefinder design. Only in that camera, that original film X-Pan, I think would have taken my panoramics where the larger Fuji couldn't. My digital cameras, I feel, followed the right path in many ways. I made the right choices. First it was the Canon 5D, followed by the improved Mark II, before downsizing to the Olympus OMD cameras. The Canons were chosen for their full-frame sensors over Nikon's crop format, as well as their range of wide-angle lenses. The Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras were part of a downsize, chosen over the rival Fuji EX1. And the Olympus image stabilizing transformed my photography and the images I could capture. But after 10 years of shooting MFT, I have of course now moved to Fuji. My photography path change here was different though. The images I have taken since I don't think have changed with a change of format and change of brand. It was the right time to swap, but my photography style and approach was already set and established. The Fuji X-T5 has just changed the way I shoot. I'm cropping more instead of changing lenses. I'm using more limited focal length choices and no zooms. And I'm dabbling in panoramic again and just taking advantage of the 40 megapixel sensor. The one camera I feel I would have liked to have owned and could have been the right camera for me is the Panasonic S1 or the newer S5. I tried that out at a photography show and it was a thing of beauty, but I couldn't get over how heavy it was. Definitely a tripod camera, whereas I now shoot handheld exclusively. But it shoots panoramics, the X-Pan frame, in camera though, as near to a new X-Pan as we've got. So when I got myself back into film a few years back, I decided to buy another 35mm camera, but it wasn't that OM10 that I dismissed many years ago. I did consider that, but instead I went for what I felt was the ultimate mechanical 35mm camera, the Nikon FM2. This was the one that I felt that was right for me second time around. I still haven't bought into Leica though, with an M6 or M2. They're expensive for film cameras, but maybe either of these is the camera to progress my film journey this time around. Their way of shooting and the feel of these cameras in use could see me taking different film images in the future. My next digital camera, therefore, is still out there, still being invented, still being designed, and therefore not yet in production. I don't think it will be a Leica, not a digital one. Instead, I think it's another Fuji, and therefore the next camera in my sights is the Fuji X-Pro 4. However, the cameras I think will be part of my future are the Ricoh GR series. I'm using these two cameras, the GR3 and the GR3X, more and more these days. They're so light and compact and fun to use, despite lacking a viewfinder, that I seem to be producing my best images with these cameras. Bottom line is the camera is just a tool, but there are still influences from the tool in hand that can affect the pictures you take. So, have you owned one of the cameras that I've mentioned? And if that's the case, I'd love to hear your own experience of it. And what will be your next camera? And how do you think that will influence your next images? I'll see you next time.